Remember FFH? I do. Today I catch up with FFH frontman Jeromy Deibler.
My soul finds rest in the Lord. My soul finds rest in the Lord. My soul finds rest in the Lord, 'cause He has.
Hello and welcome again to the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Newsom, and today I have with me my special guest, Jeromy Deibler from the CCM group FFH. Thank you, Jeromy, so much for joining me on this podcast here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I want to start off by making a confession.
Okay.
I don't have these moments often as a 42-year-old middle-aged man, but I might have geeked out a little bit when you returned my email. My wife
gosh.
and I were a little obsessed with FFH back in the day. So
Well, that's good.
I got some show and tell. There's
Right on. Look at that. Signed and everything. Oh, yeah. Boy, that's
and those of you listening on the audio, I am showing off my collection of FFH autographs. My wife has a T-shirt somewhere. I couldn't find it. It's up in the attic.
excellent. Man, that makes me feel good.
And I just wanted to just a little background that we would go and see FFH anytime y'all came close to us, and we actually would hang back in the autograph line so that we could spend a little bit of extra time talking with y'all. And I'm embarrassed to say we also slipped you a demo album one time. I don't know if you've ever even listened to it or just threw it away. Hopefully you threw it away. It wasn't good. We're kind of embarrassed about it now.
Who was it? You and your wife?
Me and my wife, and I guess we were wanting to do what you and Jennifer were doing.
Okay.
And so we saw in y'all sort of the couple that had accomplished what we were wanting to try to do, and we really looked up to y'all. And I say all that just because I want to start off by saying thank you for your music, for your influence on our ministry. God took us a different direction. We did not get into the recording stuff. God led us a different way, and here we are in ministry. Still doing music though, so just wanted to say thank you for that.
Is that what you guys do there at the church?
I am the worship minister. Yes, worship minister. My wife has done worship leadership. We're both musicians, got music degrees. She was a choir director. I was a band director for a while, and then God took us to seminary, and here we are in the local church.
As in, like, high school band?
High school band. That's right.
Right on. Man, that's fun stuff. Those are my, favorite memories of my childhood. It was high school band.
Yeah, I mean, over here, you can see my instrument,
totally.
My collection of instruments over there.
Yeah, very cool.
So listen, we and some of this, what I'm going to ask you to tell us about, I already know a little bit about it. My wife follows Jennifer on social media, so she's been keeping up with some of the goings on over the years. But back in the day, back in the late '90s and early 2000s, FFH, I think 2 million plus albums sold, 7 #1 hits, Dove Awards. I couldn't find out how many Dove Awards. A Billboard Music Award nomination. I wasn't even aware of that one.
Yeah, I'm wondering where you're finding this stuff.
Google knows everything.
Yeah, too much. We just watched the Social Dilemma movie on TV, and now my daughter wants a flip phone. She's worried about people watching her.
Yeah. Well, your last studio release was in 2012. It was just you and Jennifer. The last release of FFH as a 4-person group was in 2005 with Brian Smith and Michael Boggs. So catch us up for those who may not be following FFH the way we have in the past. Catch us up to what's been going on with everybody.
Well, it's funny you know those dates, and when you toss them out, it seems that hear the dates makes it seem like a long time ago, but it doesn't feel like it was,
Right.
The older, you and I are roughly same age. The older we get, I feel like the years go much faster. But yeah, I mean, to go back to some of those dates that you tossed out there, I think one of the major life changes for us was that 2006, 2007, 8-ish range. We lost our record deal with Sony, BMG, and Essential around that time. We did end up signing another record label deal, but that was at the time that was a really weird thing, because we had, like you said, sold all of those records, and we, the initial intent was just, well, let's sign a deal with somebody else. And while we were considering that, I went to Africa for a couple of weeks. And while I was there, I was like, maybe we just need to hold on that.
Right.
And we did. We held off for a little bit. We did end up signing another record deal, but in the meantime, we got a chance to sort of think and dream and scheme a little bit. Jennifer and me ended up moving back to Africa for 6 months with our son, Hutch, who was 2.5 at the time. And then when we came back, we started praying that maybe we could have our life look a little bit more here in the States like it did there. And that kind of takes us up to 2010, roughly 10 years ago, when we started thinking about moving out of Nashville and, maybe having a bit more of a normal life for the kids. Sadie was born in 2007, Sadie Claire. She'll be 13 in 3 weeks.
Huh.
Actually, no,
that's the same age as my daughter.
Yeah. What's your daughter's name?
Sarah. She turned 13 in May.
Sarah. Okay. So Sadie turns 13 next month. When she was, she was roughly 3, and we were still touring as FFH. Brian and Mike weren't in the band anymore, but it was still 4 of us out on the road on a tour bus. When you caught FFH live, I don't know if you probably remember this, but it was the 4 of us plus 2 other guys on stage, a drummer and another guitar player.
Right. And
Brian and Mike left. Those other guys just sort of slid into their spots. And so Jennifer and me and those 2 guys did a lot of touring. One of those is John Fiery, the one that Michael Boggs, our original guitar player, introduced us to. And then the other was Brian Barefoot, he and I married sisters. He was our drummer. And so it was very close knit. But we were doing some stuff on a tour bus, some stuff we were flying to some dates, and we were trying to kind of do a hybrid, half and half, where we were touring half the time and the other time we were at home. And we're still making records, which we love to do. But then, I really think God's kindness, we ended up receiving an invitation to move out here to Orange County and settle in for just a little bit, to be part of a small church community and be, a little bit normal. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they hear normal, those people who have had a normal, quote, air quotes, life, they might think of it as boring. But after being on the road for 10 straight years, Jennifer and I, we saw that as romantic. Just being able to be home, and
right,
the kids got to be in play sports and be in dance classes and that kind of thing. So. Yeah, so that's what we've been doing. When we came out here in 2014, we agreed to be here for 3 years, and we kind of thought that this would be a good spot to be for a couple of years and then move on. And we're still here, 7 years almost into it. It just feels like it's been a good spot for us.
Right. Well, and what you said about being on tour and wanting something normal, I don't mind sharing. That's actually the reason my wife and I stopped pursuing the sort of the recording career. We came to a crossroads sometime during college and just had a really long heart-to-heart talk about what it would look like to raise a family in that environment. And we decided we didn't want to do that. We wanted to settle down and be more normal. So instead we went into ministry. God called us to continue doing music, but more of a local type of thing. So what are, a long career with FFH, I believe y'all started in the mid-90s. So that takes you, almost 20 years doing recording. And and touring. What are some of the most important lessons that God taught you during that time?
Well, it's weird because it's weird, Kevin, because I don't feel like being a full-time musician, artist, songwriter, recording artist I don't feel like I've had a season of that. I've been doing that since I was 15 years old.
Right.
My sweetest high school memories were in high school band, and Brian Smith and I started our band when we were still in high school, and that's the same band. It's the same roots of
Right.
FFH. So, and Jennifer and me we continue to play music. We get to do it together all the time. I'm back again writing and recording music on my own, just as Jeromy Shawn Deibler. But that doesn't mean we aren't doing it together. It's just, I had some solo stuff sort of on my mind and artistically in my heart that I'm releasing now. But so it's hard for me to answer that, because every lesson I've learned has been in the context of being an artist. All I've ever done is make stuff and play music. And I do remember when I was a kid, a teenager, I remember praying, Lord, if I could just do this for a living. At the time, I really didn't know anything about the music business. I didn't really know there was a Christian music business. But I just loved music so much. I just thought, man, if I could just do this and not have to do anything else. And in God's great kindness, that's what I've been able to do. I mean, everywhere I've been, music has kind of been my thing. So I don't really know how to answer that, other than, this life of being an artist and touring and traveling has, taught us that we need to keep our snail shell really light, because it requires a lot of spontaneity and travel, and it's an adventure for sure. And if you've got too many connections or too many things tying you down, or too much debt or all that, it can be really overwhelming and exhausting.
Yeah, I bet. You mentioned doing some recording, some writing new songs under, did you say Deibler?
Yeah, that's my last name, Deibler.
I have been saying it wrong for 20 years.
No, you know what? Most people have been saying it wrong, but really, they're kind of saying it right. I don't know. I mean, it's pronounced Deibler, which is like the German pronunciation. The only other person I can think of that does that is Seinfeld. It's spelled the same, and it's a hard I, but we answered it Deibler because we know that's kind of what it looks like.
Right. So yeah, you've, I think, 4 singles as a solo artist that you've done this year. Can we expect a full-length album anytime soon? What's your future plans here?
I'm going to keep making songs. I don't know what full-length albums even look like anymore.
Well, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like,
I know exactly what you mean.
Things have changed so much, and I'm just starting to sort of re-enter this space. To be honest, I wasn't sure if there was any room for me in this space anymore. I mean, when we came here to California, we intentionally just wanted to go kind of dark and just, make our life really small and just focus on Sadie Claire and Hutch. And then, when things started to happen with COVID, here I was spending a lot of time right here in this office that you see me in, just playing music and, taking meetings on Zoom, but then also going, how, is this sort of a nudge from you to put some stuff out there? So I released a couple of singles out to iTunes and Spotify and all, those outlets. And then Soul Finds Rest, the one that's out now, we're actually taking to radio. It's being promoted like, the old FFH singles were promoted to Christian radio. And, it's kind of a wait and see for me. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen. The business has changed so much. So when you say, what are my plans? I'm not sure. After this, I'm going to have lunch.
I wanted to ask you also, my son actually does some electronic music, and we've done a couple albums with him that we put out on Spotify. It's ridiculously easy if you
Yeah,
have the gear to do this
yeah,
now.
it is.
If from your perspective, how has it changed? What are some of the new challenges as far as being a professional musician?
Well, I mean, that's one of them. That with the right gear and the right technology and a person who really knows how to work the technology, almost anybody can sound good. And so what I think the challenge is there, and it may be an opportunity too, but I think the challenge is that the songs still have to be good. No matter how good something sounds sonically, it does still start with the song and having a great song. And I've written a lot of bad ones that I've tried to polish and make sound good, but a song that's just a song that is mediocre, no matter how good you try to make it sound, it's still not a great song.
Jeromy, let's talk about where God has you now. You moved to Irvine, California, doing worship leadership at Journey Church. The website says you're also the pastor of Spiritual Experience. What does that mean?
That's a good question. So yeah, after my 3 years here, that are the initial kind of commitment, and it wasn't really a hard, strict contract. But the Journey just said, look, if we're going to move you out here, we'd like you to stay for 3 years. And after that 3 years, we actually decided to move on. There was not a ton of drama. We just said, it's been 3 years and it's been lovely. Maybe it's time to move on. And the leadership said, well, what if we changed your role a little bit? Would you be able to stay? And part of that is what we do now is we still play music on the weekends, and that's still a huge part of what we do. But the pastor of Spiritual Experience role has more to do with how people experience the community and us and God, really, from the time that they park their car and come in and are part of the gatherings or services or whatever you would call them. My hope is to be able to show people what God is like. And I, probably like you, struggle at times with, even on our Sabbath day in what is supposed to be a sacred place. Sometimes I'm wondering if we do more harm than good in showing people what God is like. I'm wondering if, I wonder if sometimes people come in and they don't really get a good impression. And this isn't so much just for people who might be visiting the congregation. It's also people who have made kind of this Sabbath their, weekly rhythm for so long,
Right.
that has become just a rhythm, and there's not a ton of life in it. It's not an experience of God. And so that's really what that title means. It hasn't really changed my role there as much. I'm still, it's a relatively small community, so I'm still responsible for Jennifer and I play music there every week. If we're gone, we have to find replacements, and that part of it hasn't changed. But the approach is more, how people experience God during that 90 minutes. What that spiritual experience is like.
One of the things that has really been on my mind and my heart lately is just how much this whole pandemic thing has messed people up in regards to, just a spiritual life. We see for so long, especially when they were staying home. I don't know. Have y'all reopened there at your church at all?
At 25%. Yeah.
At 25%.
So we can roughly have like 60 or 70 people maybe on a Sunday.
Okay, we are doing hybrid stuff. We've got outdoor, which we got our FM transmitter for people who want to stay in their cars. We've opened up the sanctuary for people who want to go inside and piping video in there. We're trying to do a little bit of everything to minister to as many people as possible. as well as the online stuff. We're streaming it online, but we're finding and hearing stories about people who have just gotten themselves into such a bad place spiritually. So what are some of the challenges that you have seen, and how are you addressing those?
Well, I mean, when I think about challenges, the first thing I think is my own family. I mean, for the first month or so of COVID, we didn't know anybody who had it, and we weren't directly affected by it, and nobody at Jeromy, very, very few people knew anybody. And so we were all in lockdown, and at first it was sort of campy for our family. I have to say, we never wanted anybody to be sick and all that, but just in our basic situation, we enjoyed it. We didn't have to say no to the kids. They couldn't go anywhere. I mean, we just all were home. And, but that turned, quickly over the summer. And, I think that our kids are lonely and sad, and, we're letting them see their friends, and, taking precautions, but also trying to let them have, still let them have a childhood, trying to be smart and also considerate. Out here in California, we have to wear a mask everywhere we go. So a lot of it, we don't have a ton of choice, but I think sadness and loneliness is a challenge. So much has stopped. And, I think the kids, every time they go out, well, all of us, we're reminded, when you see people in a mask, and we're reminded that it's, everything's not okay. And that's the challenge for us as a family, a community, a church. This is just a weird time to be alive. And then there's all this political tension.
Right.
It's really divisive. And I don't feel like God is in any of it. I think that what Jesus wants is for wholeness and unity, and it feels like we're just becoming more and more divided. I'm hoping after the election that maybe people will just somehow move back to one another. But I don't feel like this is what God wants. And so with the sadness of COVID and the political tension, this is a really weird time to be alive.
Right. And in my opinion, I want to get your comment on this as well. Worship is such an important part of the solution, because it really brings you back around and grounds you into the presence of God, and which is where we find the solution to all of these issues, to the loneliness, to the divisiveness. If we're unified in the presence of God, and it's almost impossible to be lonely when you're in the presence of God. So how do you see worship as part of the solution?
Well, here's what's interesting about that, and because you're a music pastor, you'll probably be able to sympathize with this a little bit. But when we were playing concerts, and when we go play music to play music, we don't play ticketed concerts, anymore. But when we did, and even now when Jennifer and me go to play music, outside of a church experience, the music is the point. There's no preaching, right? But up until this point, I feel like in almost every church setting I've been in, the music has been seen as a setup to the sermon. It's like the opening for the most important thing is the sermon, the teaching, the takeaway, you've heard this, now so what? And I actually think one of the gifts in COVID is that people are realizing now that maybe we've missed the point with that. Music and art, and really rest and centering, and like you said, grounding in Christ, who is the ground of all being, coming back to our center in Jesus is the point. The point is not the song, the point is not the sermon, and it's definitely not the sermon takeaway, because we're living in a situation right now where to give somebody something through some kind of sermon to take away, to have them remember it even into the car, is almost impossible. But if in the moment we can give people a place to return and rest, if in the moment they can find the presence of God and sort of, the Psalm, Lord is my shepherd, Psalm, now I can't remember the, Lord is my shepherd, shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside quiet waters, and gives me back my soul. He restores my soul. And I think that restoration of the soul is something that can happen inside like of a corporate worship experience, even if people have to have their masks on and they can't sing. Like, because that's what we're doing right now. For whatever reason, singing is really exposes people to COVID. So even in our indoor services now, we've actually put the band on the floor. We've set up the chairs in the round so that people can at least see each other. They're not looking just at the band; they're looking at one another. They have masks on. We're not encouraging people to sing. Of course, we're not going, look, stop singing if they do through their masks. But even in that kind of setting, being able to feel the music and being with one another, the Lord can and does restores people's souls a little bit. And I think we're learning that that's the point. The point is not some message or takeaway. The point is not just to come and have, communion elements. The point, you know what I mean? All that stuff is really important. The point is not the songs we sing, whether it's 2 fast songs than 2 slow songs. It's not whether we play the doxology or not. The point is that we get a chance to live in our souls for a minute. And that reminds us, who we are as humans and as people who have like the image of God in us, the reminder of who we are. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. And you're talking about a holistic approach to designing a church service from beginning to end. It's one experience. And so as you sort of encounter God, you hear God, and you respond to God. And something we try to do here, and I'm actually very, very picky about the worship songs that we do here, because I want to make sure that they're teaching the right kinds of things, and that the theology is right behind them, not just something that's catchy and fun to sing. So yeah, it makes absolute sense. We've got to we got to include the whole thing, the whole service. And not sort of cheapen one part and elevate another part. It's all part of our experience. It's all worship. Even the sermon is worship. It's the response is worship. So it's all worship. It's not just the singing. I think that if people can wrap their brains around that, it would really help them through some of these difficult times, because we are in a lot of difficult times. And so what would you say to someone who is struggling right now? Maybe they're watching this from home, because look, we joke around here at our office that in the middle of March, we turned the offices into a YouTube studio. We tried to put so much out so fast, because we wanted the people to know that we still remembered them. And we recognized that there were people that were at home that what we were doing for them was the only chance they got to see anybody from their church family for a little while there. And there are still people that, for whatever reason, are keeping themselves in that situation. And here in South Carolina, we're probably not quite as restricted as you still are in California. We're still able to mostly open, everything's mostly reopened with some guidelines and everything, but there are still people who got themselves into such a bad place mentally and emotionally that they don't want to venture out. Maybe they think their friends have forgotten them. So what would you say to someone that might actually be watching this or listening to this at their homes, that need and they need to get back to to their relationship with God. Maybe they've been neglecting it. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, first, Kevin, the first thing I would probably say is me too. That what has it been, 7 months now, or 8 months, and over the course of that time, I've had times of extreme gratitude, where I'm like, because I'm healthy, and I watch TV and I see hospitals at times that are full, and everybody from essential doctors and nurses to people who work at the grocery store, they have to work all day with a mask on or in PPE. And so there's been times of great gratitude. And then I have had times of hopelessness of, I don't want this to, this has to stop. And then hearing it could be, another year, or, watching the news leads to hopelessness for me, because you can see how people are using the information against each other.
Right.
And so I have actually, when I say me too, I've kind of gone back and forth from, on my best day, I'm like, let's, be grateful for what we have and let's go do this. On my worst day, I don't want to get out of bed. I'm a bit of an empathetic. I live sort of from my feeling center first, and I tend to sort of feel everything. And so for me, that leads to depression. I have a history of clinical depression anyways. And so this can turn into hopelessness for me. And so me too, first thing I'd say. And then maybe the second one is a person. I wouldn't say, I think, would you say, well, you need people, be around people. It's hard to maintain friendships with a lot of people, especially like this,
right.
but somebody, talk to somebody, even if you sit on the phone and you fuss about life for an hour, that's still some human interaction. Right. That's something, that's someone. For me, music helps me feel my feelings. So, if I'm sad, I want to hear a sad song because it helps it come out. If I'm happy, I want to hear a happy song, So I think art does help. Walking in the grass with your shoes off has helped, just taking a lap around the house, being outside, God reveals himself through each other and nature. And, so one day, a couple of months ago, I came up the hill, and my hutch we don't have a yard or anything. We just have sort of a back patio, which is good for nothing but for the dogs to use. And then we just have a front sidewalk. And my son Hutch had a hammock strung just on the front sidewalk, laying out underneath a tree. And I think that can be good, laying out underneath a tree on a blanket. I think those small steps will maybe lead us to want to maybe take bigger steps. But I think it's hard to tell somebody, just go back to church. That feels like a big step. I feel like a small step is, come out of your house, get to the mailbox, get out of your PJs, and, go to Starbucks drive-through, feel human again, that kind of thing. That's what Jennifer and me did from the get-go of COVID. For whatever reason, our Starbucks drive-throughs never closed. And so we never went anywhere for those first month or two, except for we would sort of take a little daily date, go to the Starbucks drive-through, talk to each other, and come home. And it helped. It was fun. We remember it as fun.
All right. One more thing. I didn't send this question to you, but I wanted to ask this. We'll bring this back around to the music. We started with music. We're going to end it with music.
Let's do
it. So we talked about how much it's changed since over the past 20 years. But what kind of advice would you give to a young musician, teenager, 20-something, that wants to make a go of this music career as a Christian artist? What kind of advice would you give them as they're just starting out?
I'll probably give any Christian music industry or any other industry for that matter, music-wise, is to concentrate on the songs. I do more than ever believe that good songs eventually surface, and they live for a long time. Like,
Right.
a good song is a good song. Like, I Can Only Imagine and God of Wonders. I mean, we're going to be singing those in 20 years. Like, they're not going anywhere. I've noticed that with some, I've written a lot of songs. So I'm saying a small percentage of them. I've noticed that.
In our house, Big Fish still gets sung.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. But we've, through COVID, I've actually gone back to a couple of tunes that I wrote for those early couple of records, and I played them in different ways for our church community. And they were like, "Oh, did you just write that song?" You know what I mean? The good songs, they hold up for a long time. It's not like I better get this out in a hurry, because good songs are good songs. I mean, I sat down at, I'm sitting at my piano now, but I was like, I can't find the words to pray. And just those first couple of bars of Lord Move or Move Me meant something to the people of the church. They didn't know I had recorded it 15 years ago. For them, they thought it was new. Does that make sense? So
Right.
I feel like a good song is a good song. And if you concentrate on writing and making good music, it will eventually surface. I mean, it may take a while, but touring is important. Making records sure is important and fun. I mean, we tell young artists, always say yes. If someone wants you to come play music, the answer is yes.
Right.
Period. The way to stop a career is to say, well, I don't leave my house for less than whatever. It's just yes. You just say yes. If someone wants to hear you play your songs or talk about your songs on a podcast, you say yes. And in God's kindness, that's what has sustained us.
Right. Well, that's all I've got. So how can people who want to find out more about you, about your ministry, maybe they want to go dig through the 20-year history of FFH and listen to some of the good old music, how can they find out more information?
Well, FFH.com will lead people to JeromyShawnDeibler.com. I've, for the time being, sort of switched everything over because it's what I'm doing right now. I'm on Facebook at Jeromy Shawn Deibler. I do an Instagram daily, every day, just a little 59-second devotional of me playing some music, and usually some kind of scripture thing, I don't know how else to call it, but a thing. And so, I mean, I'm out there, Spotify, iTunes, just Google Jeromy Shawn Deibler, Jeromy with an O, and that stuff will come up. I also have a YouTube channel that just a girl from church set up for me, which has actually been really cool. People subscribing to it and watching stuff on there, but it's all just my name, Jeromy Shawn Deibler.
Hey, well, I'll gather a bunch of those links and I'll put them in the description, YouTube and on the podcast, so people can easily follow through. And
cool. I'll forward you a press release that just came out. I'll forward it to you, and that way you'll have all the links and stuff.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you again, Jeromy Deibler. I'm going to say it right this time, for joining me on this podcast. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening on your podcast app, and we'll see you next week. This has been the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast with author, musician, and worship pastor Kevin Newsom. Thank you for joining us today, for your comments, and for subscribing. See you next time.